Scofield, and most of you are probably familiar with me already, just because making this available to folks that have already been through several of other resources that I've done and courses and things like that. But I've had on my heart for a while now. I wanted to do a short video series called Learning to Pray with the Apostles. And the reason why is just over the years, both because of the nature of people's schedules here locally and the strange dynamic of offering resources online, is that there's not as much discipleship and interaction as there really needs to be to sustain something like the message of the gospel in a culture like we have today. And really what I would do, given all the time and removing all the space limitations, I would after hearing the gospel and working through the scriptures, and I apologize for some of you who haven't worked through some of my stuff if you stumble upon this. This is basically made for those who've gone through like the Gospel Foundations course and others like that. But if you haven't, then I hope it can still be a blessing to you, but I might make some references to things that you don't understand. So my apologies. But my hope really is that this could be a means where we could talk about basically what we'd talk about if those limitations were removed, and it would basically be to sit down and talk about the centrality of prayer. It would be to sit down and take hours to establish a routine of praying together and being sustained by the grace of God in prayer. And so I call it Learning to Pray with the Apostles because I really appreciate with guys like Mike Bickle and the House of Prayer in Kansas City. One of the things that they've done, some of the prayers of the apostles, that they use these prayers as exemplary prayers for us to learn. And so we go through and they teach us how to pray, and it's really good. I want to go one step beyond that and say it's not just because they're in the Bible that they're exemplary to us. It's that they were prayed by the apostles who were examples to us, especially to us Gentiles. And that fits in a broader framework than just Acts 1, go into all the nations, or the Great Commission. But what the framework it fits in is going all the way back to Sinai, and it's an issue of Gentile humility. I know it's contentious with some, but the fact is that God chose one family of all the families of the earth to be a blessing to the nations, and that one family is the family of Abraham, and when he visited the whole nation at Sinai, he then gave them the Torah, basically, right? The first 5 books of Moses, and the Torah lays out many things. It establishes history and worldview. What is creation and existence like, and these things. It also establishes who is Yahweh and what is He like, and how ought we to serve Him if we want to give our lives to Him and we want to pledge allegiance to Him and forsake idolatry, which is what's native to all the nations, ours included. And so the testimony that was handed down to them was then given to them as a commission that they might be a blessing to the other Gentile nations. And so we know this will have its full expression in the age to come when the law goes forth from Zion, and like in Isaiah 2. But even if you look at Acts 17, Paul is rejected by synagogue. Paul and Barnabas, they're rejected by a synagogue, and Paul and Barnabas leave, and they quote Isaiah 49, and he says, very good, since you are deeming yourselves unworthy of everlasting life, we're going to the Gentiles because God has commanded us, a light to the Gentiles I've made you. And Isaiah 49 is talking about the righteous remnant of Israel actually walking in their calling to be a light to Gentile darkness. And so Paul even sees his commission to go to the Gentiles as simply walking out God's commission from the beginning to the righteous remnant of Israel. And so I want to encourage us to receive the testimony of prayer from the apostles as something that God ordained much farther back even than the first century, when Jesus the Messiah commissioned them to go preach the gospel to Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, and the nations. It goes further back than that. So I want to make this short series, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to learn what they thought about prayer, what they were raised to understand about prayer, and so what were they doing? What did they think they were doing when they prayed? And so this is basically going to be an introduction, this first part, and the only really point I want to make is in the introduction is I want to talk about actually 2 points. I want to just say 2 things about the way they understood prayer. And the first one is they viewed prayer as something that was essentially always connected to the God of Israel and to the assembly of Israel. And corporate prayer really dictated the way they all spent their lives. Corporate, collective prayer. Like there's examples of this. Like here's a good example in Luke 1. Here we go. First chapter of Luke. Now, verse 8. Now it happened that while he was performing his priestly service before God in the appointed order of his division, according to the custom of the priestly office, he was chosen by lot to enter the temple of the Lord and to burn incense. So this was a Levitical duty. And so obviously the nation relates around the temple and the sacrificial system because this is what God taught them. And but listen to what's happening. He was chosen by lot to enter the temple of the Lord to burn incense, because this happened day and night. And the whole multitude of the people were in prayer outside at the hour of the incense offering. And this is not like an unusual occasion, is that prayer, corporate prayer, collective prayer, and the offering of the incense to God, or really several things that were related to the sacrifices. This was normal for them to understand it. Partly, and we'll go over this next in the next session, but partly because they viewed the sacrifices, because obviously if you read through the book of Leviticus, there's not a guarantee that sacrifice removes sin from anyone. God really vindicated and cleansed people who were sincere in their repentance and turning towards Yahweh. He cleansed them from their sin. Unrepentant sin, for example, didn't ever have a sacrifice in the Old Testament. This is something that sometimes we say they just kind of, they did the ritual and their heart wasn't in it, and that's not the case. It doesn't say that at all in the Old Testament scriptures. And so prayer was really viewed, both individual prayer, but we're focusing on collective prayer right now because that was so central for the nation, as a consecration to God. It was them pledging themselves to God first and foremost. And so as we think about prayer, I like for us to begin to think of prayer being a way for us to come before God, to pledge ourselves to Him again, to give our allegiance to Him. And I want to just end with this one verse I had pop into my head. I'm in Psalm 141. And it says, O Lord, I call upon you, hasten to me. Give ear to my voice when I call to you. He says, may my prayer be counted as incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as the evening offering. And the idea is the incense that they burned was a special concoction, right, that the priests would make, and God gave them the ingredients to it, and they could only make it for this exact setting in the temple, and they would get in big trouble if someone else made it in a different context. But God says a number of times through the Torah that it was a sweet smelling fragrance to God. It was very, very pleasing to God. God loved the smell of this incense. And so David says, may my prayer be counted as incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as the evening offering. They did that when calling upon the name of the Lord. Right? That's what Solomon did when he was consecrating the temple. He called upon the name of the Lord in prayer, and he raised his hands. And but he continues, that my prayer be like incense. Let my prayer be pleasing before you as it rises. And the lifting up of my hands is pleasing as the evening offering. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, and keep watch over the door of my lips. Don't incline my heart to any evil thing, to practice deeds of wickedness. And what is just stands out to me so much, and I want to end with this, is I want my prayer to be pleasing. So I ask you that you would help guard my mouth from foolishness. Guard my mouth from lashing out against others and things that are unpleasing to you, a false witness. And keep my mouth consecrated for prayer. Seems to be kind of the connection that's happening in David's mind, that he's saying that you have, just like in Luke 1, the incense and prayer connection, and he's saying, let my prayer be as pleasing to you as the incense and the evening offering. So set a guard over my mouth, God, and don't incline my heart to any evil thing. So this really is where the apostles learned how to pray. It's from the prayers of David, from the prayers of Moses and Daniel. And how did these guys pray? What did they view prayer as? And this is what Paul and John and Peter would have told us they knew prayer to be. And so we're going to learn about the centrality of corporate prayer a little bit more. We're going to learn a little bit more about what they thought about prayer and how that fit in context to their covenant with God and their relationship with Him. So I hope this has been a blessing. It's carried on a little bit longer than I wanted to, but hopefully we'll keep the other ones a little bit shorter. So bless you guys, and as always, you can message me or find a way to connect with me on the internet and ask me any questions or if I can help you with anything. Much grace to you guys. We will, God willing, get the others up shortly. Blessings.